Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. This is our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. BST, every day of the week where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some and or a lot of money on the internet. I'm your host, Bchuk. I'm joined by my legendary co-host, Legendary, and Sammy joining not on video, but on stage with us today. We're going to get into everything that's been going on over the weekend in the NFT market, the crypto market, and the Blast Gold market, one of our favorite new commodities. But just as a reminder, as always, nothing that we say here is financial advice. This modern market is very, very risky. So please do proceed with caution and do choose to exercise some or a lot of your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, it is Monday. It is the 6th of May. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
GM, weekend seems so far away. So many things have happened. We had 2 Blast Jackpots. I had one that Mad Lad on Insert App on Blast spinning around with 0.25 ETH in total. We have an utterly insane run on fantasy top creators and cards. The market is back, and that just basically happened in the last 48 hours, and I already feel like it's been weeks since those events.
Yes, I'm glad that you thought something similar, because when I was away over the weekend, I did feel like there were just things happening on top of each other, over and over again. And it's like, this is a lot to stay on top of. So fortunately, we're here to try to get into that stuff, try to make sense of it all. Any personal reflections at the moment, Legendary? I mean, we were just talking off air in terms of our energy levels and how long we've kind of been going at it on a daily basis, very much before this bull market started. How are you just approaching it from a personal perspective at the moment, dealing with the downs, but also, you know, we're back, we're so over, we're back, we're so back, and just dealing with that whole cycle of positivity, negativity, and everything to do with that?
Those movements in the market don't really stress me. I feel like there's never enough time either way, whether BTC is at 55, 65, or 70K. But what stresses me is the amount of things that are happening. And I mean, I'm used to airdrop farming, right? I've been doing this for like 4 years or 3 years or whatever, depending on which airdrops you count first.
Yeah.
But I never had something on an ecosystem level like Blast, where you just have new things popping up, and all those things are bigger than the things before, because this is how Ponzi works, right? You have to increase the gold pot size, and they just become too big to ignore. And the rules become less clear when it is blur, whether that's blur farming, where you just don't know how much gold you will receive, or gambling on the jackpot, which again is too big to ignore. And that just adds more and more daily to-dos on the list, because you just don't want to be diluted last minute. And I think what also contributes to that is that the overall timeline is accelerating massively, and that is driven by the Blast Jackpot, right? Because
what do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is everyone in their mind was like, we're going to have Blast TGE, and then you have all those protocols doing the TGE at some point after the Blast TGE. Like, that was the playbook. That was clear, with the exception of Juice maybe and a couple others. That was the playbook for everyone. And now the Blast Jackpot, where you can stack ERC20s and win gold, suddenly creates an incentive that if your project doesn't have NFTs and doesn't have a token, to fucking get that out now before the Blast TG happens and all jackpots have been distributed, because people, the biggest communities, don't necessarily have tokens right now, and people want those tokens, they want them fast. And that means you have to align investors, you have to align the KOLs, marketing, market makers, exchange listings, and everything, and speed track and fast track that. And that adds so much more complexity to the whole airdrop farming situation, and so much more time pressure with it. And it's becoming a lot. Like, it just cannot cut down on sleep anymore. I'm at the bare minimum to survive for the next 4 weeks, and I can maintain that level, but I'm getting am getting pushed to the limit, to be honest.
That's very interesting observation. I think there's clearly an argument for what you just described, and it got me thinking of what ones are out in the wild. And I was just thinking of Juice. Obviously, we're investors in Juice and have some of this token already. But I was just checked the price, and you'd be interested. I don't know. I doubt you will have seen it, given how many things you're saying you're looking at the moment. But this is the Juice chart at the moment, which is in the last one day up 22%. Maybe kind of having the thinking that you just described sink in across other people, which is these tokens, just holding the tokens now can win you a significant amount of gold. And therefore, whichever tokens are actually out there in the market have suddenly got this potential jackpot win in them, which means that they can be priced a bit higher, potentially. I'm not saying that, well, I think what you articulated was the theory for that. I think the market is maybe backing that up, given that it's up 22%, which is a lot for it to just be up in one day, in the last 24 hours. Just to note, though, I'm just going to share for transparency, the chart for Juice. It's not great, to be honest. Like if you look at it on the month, I think it came out around 15 cents, went up to 18 cents. Huge downward spiral since then, if we're being completely honest. And if you're watching in, you know, we're live on video on X, live on video on YouTube as well, if you need to see this. But went from as high as about 0.18 down to 0.07 at one point in time, now up to 0.12. So I guess your thinking here, Legendary, is these tokens, particularly of the, you know, the protocols that have the most attention, are probably going to win a jackpot, if not tomorrow, if not the next day, like at some point in time.
Yeah, that, and adding the fact to that there's not a lot of protocols who have attention and have a token. Like PAC was the prime example. It's not like every project out there already has its own token. Juice is certainly one of the biggest.
Yes.
Wasabi profited by partnering up with PAC because Rapid PAC was eligible as well. So if you were using that, you kind of had a nice jackpot to get. Fantasy Top got the second jackpot. Obviously, you can have those NFTs in the jackpot farming as well. You have native NFT projects like Blast Tokens. But if you look at so many of the other big gold receivers, they don't have tokens, they don't have NFTs. So obviously the market is going to buy what is out there and what is successful and speculate on that beautiful, beautiful gold dividend on token or NFT price.
Okay, look, I've got some more questions on gold dividends and the like. So we're going to get into that in just a little bit. But let's hold that the continued questions back for a second. We want to hit the headlines and get into the news and the price action to get everyone up to speed with what's been happening over the weekend. And then we're going to hit the headlines, which is, yes, Blast Gold, Blast NFT surging, the gold jackpots. We're going to get into a full discussion on that. We're going to talk crypto, BTC back at 65K. And we also want to touch on Frentech V2 towards the end of the show, as well as touch on the rest of the news that you need to get up to speed on as well. So let's get into it, starting with price action. We've got crypto at 65K, Bitcoin up a couple of percent, ETH at 3.2K, Solana back at 150, up 5%. Headlines is that Blast NFT surge in price as gold jackpots begin. Tyler reported that there was a wall of green today and yesterday, with many up 20 to 30% and some 80 to 90%. Pluto Cats has the top spot at 2.36 ETH. Blastopians keep surging on high volume. Blast Hoods, Blast Burbs, and Game of Gold are top winners. And Frentech V2 launched a couple of days ago, I think, while I was away. Friend rose to around $3 after selling off at around $1 at the beginning. And now it's cooled off a little bit since there. But some interesting new mechanics to touch on and discuss. And then we've got the floor prices. We've got CryptoPunks at 38 ETH, Bored Apes up 3%, back at 15.5, Mutants at 3, DGods at 2.4, Captains at 3, Azuki's above 5 still at 5.2, Penguins at 11.5, Mad Lads at 87, Nouns at 7.4 ETH winning bid. Some top sales, a Pac-Man Legendary. I should have verified this properly, but on the timeline, someone's shared that it sold for 18.9 ETH. A Pac-Man Legendary Fantasy top card. I need to double check that, frankly. And I should have checked that before I published it, but I'm putting that disclosure in here now. Also, Bored Ape Zombie went for 18.5 ETH. Kind of cool to see the Bored Apes back above 15 quite routinely. So that's it. That's the price action. That is the headlines. Legendary, is there anything catching your attention before we get into a bigger discussion on crypto and Blast Gold, etc., in terms of this price action we're seeing?
Yeah, on the one hand, it is definitely the price action that we're seeing on Fantasy Top, but I guess that will be a separate discussion to be had. If we, however, take a look at the Mintify heat map, there is a couple of things that are standing out to me. One of which is actually a collection I like to see pumping. A, because I have a back bias, and B, because I actually like the project. It's the NFTs by Loopify, which hit a 10 ETH floor again, being up 10% over the last 24 hours. That's basically Loopify's quote-unquote Genesis collection when it comes to Treeverse, the game that he is building. And it's actually started out as this pixelized tree art collection. Then Loopify had obviously Treeverse that he is building as that RPG game. And those assets, the trees that is, will get apparently heavily rewarded in that ecosystem. And they've been actually holding this. I mean, they used to be higher, I think, in peak bull. They've been holding an insanely high floor over the last years.
Wow. I mean, yeah, I mean, these recent sales in the past few hours, 9.2 ETH, 9.2 ETH, 8.65 ETH, 8.69 ETH. I'm just scrolling down, 6.5 before that. But just no longer than a month ago, a few sales going through it were like 1.4, 1.5. But before that, still, yeah, 5, 6 ETH. So doubled in ETH price. You've got to think, Legendary, that some kind of activity like this on NFT trees is in relation to the Treeverse token that should be coming as part of the game coming up.
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, NFTs will get a good amount of the airdrop as well as the Treeverse plots. They, I think, are also confirmed to get an airdrop, and I haven't seen Loopify tweeting any specific news about the NFTs. But I do think that it would make a lot of sense if that is token related.
I'm looking up Treeverse at the same time. They seem to be just a touch down at about a 0.34 floor. The other thing I'm looking at, and I will say this transparently, like a bet that I made, is that these timeless characters also part of the ecosystem in some way. I don't know if it's perfectly part of it, but certainly out of the Loopify ecosystem, I thought these would be rewarded potentially in a similar way as part of that token that will probably come at some point
I
soon.
don't think that the timeless characters will get a token, but I still am also betting on them and have, I think, 2 dozens of them to be fully transparent, but I don't think it's a token play for them.
Why have we got them then? What have we done?
I still think it's a good play to have them.
Yeah, I think so. Well, that's why I've got a bunch as well, like quite a few. Maybe not quite as many as you, but a good amount. Okay. Well, I wonder whether that will end up working out or not. It seems like the NFT trees is the consensus one at the moment, but obviously that requires a hell of a lot more capital, whereas this is far more accessible, 0.18, and the other one is a 0.33, I think, the Treeverse plots. So interesting to look at there. I wanted to look at the heat map for the Blast NFTs that are legendary, because you touched on that already. This is pretty ridiculous, to be honest. Like, look at this this price action across the board. What are you seeing here? What are your thoughts on this like outrageous Blast NFT activity?
I mean, we have the Mintify Blast keys up 20%. We have Blast hoods up 14%, but they actually did a 400% pump over the last couple of days. Blast penguins up more. So everything is up massively and has been up for the last couple of days. And there's 2 factors here and 1 caveat. Like, one thing is important to keep in mind. Obviously, a lot of that is 99% of that has been farming gold on Blur on Blast. Some floor prices are being propped up, certainly artificially, by farmers as well, got in early. increase the bids, attract organic attention, and at one point will dump and will drive floor prices down. But now we also have a second effect, which came into play, which again is the Blast Jackpot, that can be won by NFTs. And personally, I'm now holding a bunch of Blast tokens, for example. I think from an NFT community perspective, they might get a jackpot or they might not get one. But my bet is that they will get one at a certain point in time. And holy shit, they're up to 0.4. Nice. And the caveat here is that once the jackpot happens, yes, people will continue to farm them for Blast, Gold, and Blur, but whatever NFT out of those gets the jackpot will crash, because then people won't have that double reason to hold it, because now you can like hold it and farm around on Blur with it and also speculate on the jackpot. It's only going to be a farming tool, and people will move their attention to the next NFT collection that allows them to potentially double dip. So I'm not comfortable to hold a large amount of those overnight, because when the jackpot happens, it will crash. So I do hold a large position of Blast tokens over the day when I'm online and when I can monitor that. And obviously, if I have the luck that Blast token, A, the jackpot hits, and B, Blast tokens hit it, and C, I am also awake when that happens, then good, that's perfect. If only those two things happen, jackpot hits and it's Blast tokens, but I sleep, then I'm just going to have a smaller position size where I'm like more comfortable to then wake up and see that the floor has been decimated, but at least I got some gold out of it. So that's the way how I am approaching that.
Okay, that's very interesting. I want to double click on like the jackpots in case people aren't familiar with how that works in a second. So we do want to get into that. But you mentioned that you think as soon as the jackpot hits, these things are likely have the potential to crash. I just want to see what the price action on PAC Moon has been after they won the jackpot 2 days ago. So yesterday it was Fantasy Top. The day before was PAC Moon, the first winner of the jackpot. And it looks like, let's see. So we're down on the day about 8-9%. I don't know. What are you seeing in this chart, Legendary? I'd say maybe.
I think we saw a small correction after the jackpot, but I think it's also important to note that a project can win the jackpot more than once.
Yes.
And I do think that is the perspective, the perspective to look at for PAC Moon. So after the jackpot hit, to be completely transparent, I did sell all of my PAC Moon to buy in cheaper because I speculated that other people might do that as well. And now I basically got the same position that I had previously, just at a 10% discount, because they do have a good chance to hit the jackpot a second time. Because again, there's not that many products out there that have a successful community and then have a token or an NFT that actually can win that jackpot.
I think that's smart thinking. One thing I'm immediately thinking that I need to do ASAP, and you know how sometimes these things come back to bite you, right? Like you put that thing on your to-do list and you know that you got to get around to it. And this happened to lots of people yesterday with the Fantasy Top win. You know that you need to do it. You know you need to add your thing to the deck. You need to add that token to a deck. You need to add that NFT to the deck, and you don't do it, and then the jackpot hits. But I'm thinking that my juice tokens, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Legendary, I have juice that I'm holding. I have juice that is in Wasabi, and I have juice which I am providing liquidity for on Thruster. My understanding is that, and that's the majority of the juice, I can't add that to the deck, I don't think.
You
So
can.
actually, oh, you
can
can
add that to the deck.
Okay.
And it's also treated as a different token. So we've seen that play out with PAC. And I think that is important to note, because with PAC, Pac-Man had posted that, yes, it's two different things, and they will treat it as two different tokens. So it's either that PAC Moon or either Wasabi wrapped PAC will win, but they would consider to make it one and the same in the future. Then the jackpot hit, and they actually did that. Both PAC Moon, both regular PAC Moon and wrapped PAC Moon were eligible in one, but I don't know how much that sets a precedence for all the future tokens. And if you have a token in a liquidity pool, the liquidity pool position is on Thruster, most likely an NFT then, which you should be able to add. But I wouldn't speculate that it works out for all the tokens like that. So if you want to speculate on juice, I don't think that pool liquidity could or would win the jackpot or would be eligible. This is just my theory. So I did, because I was providing juice liquidity as well, and I did pull that, closed that pool, and did add it to the jackpot as a regular ERC20.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking as well, man. I'm thinking I don't want to miss the jackpot, so I need to pull the liquidity. But I've been getting a decent amount of gold for the juice liquidity, to be honest. We'll have to see. That's an interesting discussion. For the people who just need us to step back for a second, this is how the jackpots work and why people are so excited about it. Blast put out a tweet a couple of days ago that there was a new way for Blast tokens NFT holders to earn gold. They've got 1 million gold, I guess, over a certain period of time coming up. During this time, ETH and USDB holders have earned points, while DApp users have earned gold. Starting today, which was a few days ago, token NFT holders can earn gold too. The Blast Jackpot randomly rewards holders on Blast with gold. Holders can add up to 8 Blast tokens or NFTs to a deck to be eligible for the jackpot. Every block, there is a small chance the jackpot will be hit, and a random Blast asset will be selected as the winner. Holders with winning assets in their deck will earn gold. Every Blast token and NFT is eligible to win the jackpot, but certain assets have more weight. And there was all kinds of random factors. I went through the list. It was like how strong the community is, how, I don't know. There was just a bunch of different things. Maybe you remember some of them as well, Legendary, but it's just like a variety of factors. But I wanted to actually ask you on the practicality of how these jackpots are being won at the moment. It said like every single block someone could win. It seems like they're just picking one a day and they're picking the most popular things. Like, is that something you've thought about? Is there really any randomization here, or are they just picking the most popular thing of the day to maximize attention on the timeline? Sammy, I can see you with your hand raised as well. Going to come to you straight away after this.
I do think it's random, but I mean, as someone who gambles a lot and knows to how creative you can build those slot algorithms, obviously you can build it in a progressive way that if the jackpot hasn't hit for insert X amount of blocks that are being mined in a day, the probability of that increases, so that it averages out to hit one a day. But I don't think it's just a facade and Pac-Man says, so next block we're going to pick a winner. I do think it's a real thing that's happening, but I do also think that it's designed in a way that odds increase so that we have like a somewhat sensible frequency of those jackpot gold distributions. And I also think that it might be adapted a bit in the future.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a very fair, reasonable thought process. Sammy, your hand is raised. What are your thoughts, my friend? How have you been approaching the jackpot? What do you think about it as things stand?
Yeah, I think it's a valid point around. So generally, I think capital flows where the attention goes. So if you start looking at DeFi Llama under the Blast segment, you can start looking at the individual tokens that have high market caps and stuff like Yes. I've seen Yes, like the Yes Weave pair that seems to be traded quite a lot, and that's actually a higher market cap than PAC as well. So stuff like that. I think Juice is just below. That's almost like half the amount of PAC, so it's not even that high. But then again, I think there is a waiting for newer tokens to be hit. So I think my approach would be to look at the tokens specifically, so fungible tokens. NFTs are less likely. I think Fantasy Top was maybe a one-off, but I do like the Blastopians play because you do have the fractionalized version. So ultimately, you kind of get the boost from the fungible token side for that specifically, and the added benefit of not restricting yourself to one jackpot slot. So you could effectively buy a ton of M Blastopians, like fractionalize them, and then just put all the fractionalized one in there. And I'm sure similar to PAC, Wasabi PAC both got hit at the same time. So I think it's probably going to be the same for that NFT collection. So I think what Legendary's done is smart. I think there's also room to probably start prioritizing based on market cap and then go down that list and allocate accordingly. Because I did look at some of the other meme tokens like Baja, Big, but they are relatively low market caps compared to the likes of PAC. So I think that ultimately you're more likely to hit with PAC again than you are for one of these smaller tokens to hit, unless, of course, they kind of rise in popularity and probably 5 to 10x from where they are at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm kind of the opinion, at least as things stand, until I see more evidence otherwise, that they'll just pick the thing that is most popular. Like the impact on the timeline of when PAC won first was colossal, in my opinion. And then the fact that Fantasy Top was just about to launch its main thing today, that's also been bubbling under the radar, or just like ready to burst above the radar, basically in the last 48 hours. And then that's happened to be the thing in the last 24 hours as well. I think it's in everyone's interest. Well, it's not in the smaller token holders' interest, but you can see how it would be very much incentivized for the people, for Blast to keep rewarding the people who are rising to the top or aspiring to rise to the top as quickly as possible. Sammy, you wanted to come back on that, and then Legendary, I know you want to come in as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, if you follow that thesis, there's a project called Pigs Get Blasted, and I think that's launching today or has already launched. It's the first 10K PFP that's actually it's launching on Wednesday. So that could be a relatively smart play to try and accumulate those and get those in the jackpot. I know that they've got 50K worth of blur bids put into a rule, so it's not a blaster token. So it doesn't have that redeemable factor, but you can effectively, like, once you mint it, you're very unlikely to be able to sell it below its floor price for some time until that bid rule is dissipated. So if you have that thesis, then I think Pigs Get Blasted launching on Wednesday could be a decent play.
Interesting. We'll have to monitor that come Wednesday. Thanks for that, Sammy. Legendary, come in here.
Yeah, live thought on what you just said, B-Check. The way, and apologies if it takes me a bit to structure that thought because I'm doing it live. The way what the jackpot is actually doing is it's kind of institutionalizing a social farming campaign. You had individual projects doing their own social farming campaigns, and now if it's essentially a protocol level popularity contest that's also being reflected on the timeline, and the most popular project has a significantly higher chance to win that jackpot, then it's in the best idea of all those protocols to rally their community, get that attention on the timeline going, and to get that additional win in. And each protocol doing that mini social farming campaign to win Blast Jackpot for its community is also a mini social farming campaign for Blast as an L2. And just marketing wise, that simple jackpot thing, the longer I think about it, is actually a genius move again.
It's so good. And you mentioned how protocols will want to try to push their communities to do this. Juice literally did this yesterday. I want to show you the tweet that I saw in their Discord, but I'm pretty sure their latest tweet said this. Have a look at this. So this came out yesterday. I'm showing this on the screen for the people who are watching in, the people who are listening. Let's have a think about Juice. Market cap 18 million, liquidity 12.7, holders 14,870, engagement, show some love, social, vibrant Discord, and D1, 40 days, jackpot soon, ? And they shared this in the Discord to say, like, guys, come on, get behind this. We want the jackpot soon, right? So it's exactly as you're explaining, like, people are willing to push it more. The additional thing I wanted to say before going to Sammy, and then we're going to move on to maybe talk about SocialFi a bit more broadly, and then kind of tie it into a little bit of Blast, but also Frentech, is that the way I was describing this to someone is that it's like trying to build a city. Blast are the government, the people in charge, and they're giving these stimuluses. They're giving all of this gold as a form of encouragement to people to come and build. And now they've got this additional incentive thing with the jackpot, where it's like, look, if you are doing particularly well, if you are rising to the top, you get this additional stimulus on top. And so I just love the analogy of the city and how Blast are kind of the central planners deciding who to push forward. I mean, we saw this with the DEX. Thruster seems like Thruster has become the chosen DEX that's going to get all the gold. And if you're not that if you're not the chosen one, you're going to get a lot less incentive now. So you're going to have to work a lot harder because you don't have that kind of official backing anymore. So it's an interesting thing to think about, particularly because NFT Stats the other day, and this stood out to me when he mentioned that, I don't know, in conversation with the Blast team at some point in time, he said like it's almost operating a little bit more like China, where it's like state-backed institutions and organizations. And maybe that even helps a little bit to get rid of the rugs, right? Because they're
I think
throwing
it's
all
more
their
like
weight.
Dubai, if I have to make an analogy.
Go on.
Shit ton of money, zero fees, lots of incentives to come and build there. Came out of nowhere, has built something incredible over, in Dubai's case, over the last 2 or 3 decades, or maybe 4 decades. But I think it's more like Dubai: friendly regulation, no fees, no taxes, do whatever you want, and we have the money to incentivize you to do that.
Love it.
We also change the rules when we want it, and this is also what Pac-Man is doing. So that's the one thing to keep in mind, that you are paying, and you're playing Pac-Man's game.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Interesting. Maybe it is more Dubai. I do like the city analogy though, so maybe it changes depending on the circumstance. Sammy, final take on this, please, before we kind of shift into SocialFi conversation.
Yeah, I think I agree with those takes, and I think also this jackpot specifically is a very smart marketing tool. It's what it's incentivizing people to do is hold the assets, and when you hold the assets, it means that there's less on the market or less in circulation, which pushes the price up. When the price goes up, people start to pay attention because they're like, oh, the value of the whole network is going up. All of a sudden, you have a lot more eyes on Blast as an ecosystem in its entirety. So it becomes this marketing campaign for the entire ecosystem. And then when the capital then flows in, it just keeps going up and it becomes like a self-perpetuating cycle. So I think it's incredibly smart what they're doing. I genuinely believe coming into TGE, you have some astronomical prices that support that whole Blast 15, 20 billion valuation.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's fair. That's definitely the bullish perspective, right? Like if you're bullish on Blast, that's what you're thinking. Legendary?
Yeah, because I just saw it in the YouTube comments, and that goes back to strategies. Crypto Mokus has made such a good point that I definitely want to bring up. Crypto Mokus said you can build delta neutral strategies like holding a Blastopian on Blur and shorting it on Wasabi. I actually didn't even think about that. That's pretty smart.
Why don't you unpack that a little bit, Legendary? Why do you think that's
basically what I was saying before is I do speculate on Blastopians getting the gold or hitting the gold jackpot at some point. But part of my speculation is also that once that happens, floor price will crash because farming attention will move to another JPEG that hasn't won the jackpot yet. And basically what CryptoMokus is saying is by shorting that Blastopian on Wasabi, in case this happens, in case the jackpot hits, and my prediction is true that the price goes down on that, given or assuming that the funding rate to do that play is sensible, which I think it is, then you will also make money once the jackpot hits and the Blastopians go down in price, which will compensate you if you set that up in a good way for the loss in floor price for holding your Blastopians, which is actually a super smart way to play the game.
I like it. I like it a lot. Maybe we need to implement this after the show. Definitely going to think about that more. Shout out to Crypto Mokus, always providing good insight in the YouTube comments. Okay, we said we're going to kind of switch it up a little bit, kind of staying on Blast, but also pivoting a touch. Just trying to think about SocialFi a little bit more, Legendary. Maybe a little bit of context is that SocialFi seems to be one of the bigger consumer use cases that people are pushing for this cycle as like a breakout use case. Yes, crypto has been used for payments before. Yes, crypto has been used to speculate on price and make a lot of money. But in terms of consumer use cases, like this is being pushed as something that can potentially be game changing in this cycle. Maybe we'll get to Friend in a little bit, Friend Tech. But you also have Fantasy Top, which has been getting a hell of a lot of attention in the last, I'd say, few days, but increasingly so because the tournament is about to go live today. Fantasy Top is a tournament on Blast where you have people, they're called heroes. You have their card and you're essentially going to earn points, and you have to build a deck. I think you have 5 or 6 cards in your deck, and depending on how they perform on Twitter, you score better. So you participate in these tournaments, you're trying to score more. So it's kind of creating a game out of everyone's online participation, which people seem to be very, very bullish on. The cards were, I think they've done something outrageous, like more than millions of dollars in revenue already from these pack sales. So it's been like pretty successful so far. What are your thoughts on just SocialFi as this kind of consumer use case, but B, like Fantasy Top in particular? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? What are your thoughts on it so far?
I would say SocialFi is one of those trends that keep coming back. I remember in 2020 we had social tokens for both communities as well as individual content creators, influencers. It was very, very popular. I think Alexei back then started that trend to tokenize yourself and offer whatever part of your perpetual revenue, a business that owns your brand, and incorporate that in the token, or just do it for a community. And we've been revisiting this narrative every bull. No, that's not bad. That's not good. It just is. It's very similar to real world asset tokenization, RWAs. We've had that essentially every bull cycle up to now in one way or the other, and we're seeing the same with SocialFi. And to me, what is impressive is to see how two very, very different things can work at the same time. When you have something like Friendtech, which is more of a social media platform in a sense, but obviously also has the the finance, the speculation component attached to it, where Fantasy Top doesn't have that social network, right? The only thing you basically have there as the game, and it's super simple, is you build a deck out of 5 creators who you think will generate the most views during a specific time frame when one of those tournaments are happening. Yes, some of the creators have group chats, and some of them are taking this seriously, especially Jen and War Daddy Capital. And they've been rising. I think Jen is now in the top 20 of creators, having flipped Thread Guy and Cyrus on Fantasy Top. But there's no way to interact with those people, no group chats there. It's just speculating that they will deliver during a specific time frame in terms of the views and impressions that they're getting on X. And it's fascinating to see that, again, those two products, like one that is more like a social media platform actually, and one that's just purely speculating on a popularity contest, can work at the same time. Obviously, with the caveat that Fantasy Top works because it has a shit ton of Blast Gold that people ultimately want to get their hands on.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's a very helpful summary. It's a difficult question to try and tease out whether people are legitimately excited about the game versus are people legitimately excited about the gold. Can it be both? Probably. I think it probably can, but there's this interesting, I don't know why people are getting so upset about it on the timeline. People seem to be getting very annoyed at, I don't know, other creators winning, maybe shilling Fantasy Top, maybe because they're a part of it and maybe are more incentivized too. But if you're not a part of it, then you're not happy. It's a game, right? It's a game that people get to play. Yes, I think is it going to be increasingly higher stakes game because people are willing to drop more and more capital into it. So there is an element of risk there for sure. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see, like, will the tournaments be sufficiently interesting, or will people care about rising up the leaderboard? Like on some level, like there's all different types of games that exist, right? If you zoom out far enough, this is what I'm thinking. And Sammy and Funky, I see with their hand raise, will come to you in a second. Like, you don't have to like every single game. There's really different types of games that exist. But the thing that you need to create as a game creator is a desire for the participants to get to the top. And Fantasy Top has 5 leagues. So there's almost already an inbuilt desire to be in one of the higher leagues. And then you'll have a ranking system where it's like, well, who's going to be at the top at playing this game? So can they make people want to win at it and care about the gold? Like, it's fine for people to have an incentive to win a game, that's completely appropriate. Mr. Beast does it all the time. Like, are you watching his videos because they're great? Maybe a little bit, but also they seem to have a huge cash prize half the time these days. So I think it's a little bit unfair on the games to say, well, people are only playing it for the prize pool. It's like, that's what people do a lot in order to get people to play the game. Legendary, you want to come in on that straight away?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I fully agree. Everything has a price pool, right? And just having a price pool is not enough these days. So you have to have a price pool and actually do something that's somewhat entertaining to people who want to bet on creators on Fantasy Top, who want to watch a wheel spin on YOLO, or do want to play Insert App to try to win an NFT, or whatever it is that they want to do. Like, everything has to have a price pool. Fantasy Top, if there wouldn't be Blast Gold, ETH, nothing to win, nobody would play that. And that's nothing bad. It's not against the product, right? It's just is that we all have limited amount of time and attention, and it becomes the standard criterion to have a prize pool because we are financially driven people. And the same, as you said, goes for content creation with Mr. Beast as well. And then the challenge still is who has the best product, maybe also the most attractive price, but still who has the best product, because the entire competition is financially incentivizing you to participate.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, I know that I believe Sammy is producing a real like Fantasy Top breakdown alpha report for his newsletter this week. So I want to throw to him in just a second, and stay tuned for maybe a little bit of a breakdown of that. But let's go to Funky first. Welcome to the stage, my friend. What are your thoughts on SocialFi, Fantasy Top in particular at the moment?
GM gang, yeah, I find this stuff really interesting, and I just want to know, why aren't there legendary and B-check cards in these things? Because it seems like you guys should be famous enough. But more importantly, I think that is an interesting thing that needs to be discussed. When I was driving home listening to Thread Guy, I don't think you were on the stage that day, B-check, he was talking about, like, what about the IP of these individuals? Like, are they getting a cut, for being in this game? Because they just seem like their image and likeness were just taken and freely put into this game. So maybe Sammy has more details on this, but that was something that Thread Guy was like, I didn't give my permission to use this. So, and I feel like there should be some kind of cut paid to these people whose likeness are being used for the game.
So just on that is happening. So the heroes, so each of these cards are called heroes, and they effectively get a rev split based on, I think it's PAC sales. So all that ETH that was deposited to purchase all the initial packs, they'll get a split. I'm not sure specifically how it's done, whether it's done on the weighting or how they perform. And I think there is some link to traded volume of their particular hero cards. So there is that incentive to continue performing, continue being engaged. But I think ultimately this has created a lot of interest in the timeline that's otherwise been fairly absent with crypto. And I think in the crypto space, where you're effectively tokenizing social capital and tokenizing attention, I think the actual game is really interesting, and people play fantasy football, fantasy NFL, or whatever it is all the time. And there's prize pools for that, but granted that the buy-in is a lot lower. But I think that this offers a new way of playing games and having fun whilst also participating in crypto. And I think that's been missing for some time, possibly since the Friendtech frenzy back in August, September last year. So I think this is a new way of doing it, but I think it's better. And actually, I think the main issue is probably the botting of impressions and things like that, which they are resolving. But it's evolving, and I think it was a buggy platform. I know Beanie was kind of against it as a result of that, but I do think if you get past that initial phase, it's a very interesting gaming model, and there's a lot of game theory behind it. And I'm seeing why a lot of these big players are buying a lot of the high value cards, because the stakes are high. So I think it compensates for that.
Yeah, I definitely like the comparison. Like, fantasy exists for everything. You don't need to actually like that particular sport, but the people who do like that sport will want to play. And I think it's a perfect example of that. If you either are against fantasy entirely, or you just don't like being on the internet all the time and like tracking your favorite creators, then you're probably not going to like this game. But there are a bunch of people who actually treat content creation as a sport, ourselves included. I've definitely used that analogy a bunch of times. So maybe that would be fun to firstly participate, and to secondly actually monitor and track and kind of talk with your fans about and kind of get involved in a bigger way. A quick point on the legal side. In fact, yeah, I'll let it go as a lawyer. It's just a boring legal point. So, Sammy, I think you were preparing your newsletter this week. I believe it was going to have a fantasy top kind of focus, which people should definitely subscribe to and check out if they are more interested in this. Do you want to give us a quick download? What do you think is the best opportunity right now in fantasy top? How are you thinking about it? Then we're going to hit the Web3 roundup and get to the final headline after that.
Yeah, so I mean, there's multiple plays, and I think you don't necessarily need to be going for these gold jackpots. And actually, if you don't have like a base set of rares or epics or legendaries, you're probably not going to be hitting some of the high value gold distributions. I know there's about 200 and something thousand. I think it's 222k gold that's being distributed. I suspect it will be fairly linearly. I think the distribution from the previous one was actually pretty fair. There was 77k that was distributed there. I only got like 5 or so gold, but that's because I basically had a set of commons. I just got in, and I was competing with people that had sets of rares that had scores that were probably 200, 300, 400 higher than me by each card. So ultimately, I think it just depends like what you're going for. You could ultimately play what Zeneca did and just bought a shit ton of common cards for relatively cheap, put them in his fantasy deck for the jackpot, and then hit on that. So like he's not going to score very high in the actual competition because he doesn't have like, the individual high value cards to get that score. But ultimately, you can play something different, go for low value cards. He's now made a profit, like a 2 or 3x on those cards at least, because the floor now is like 0.0070 as opposed to 0.002 or 3. And he's also accumulated 1,500 Blast Gold for holding about 350 cards. So he's already made his money back and more. And now he can ultimately condense 5 of each of those cards into rares and then compete. So there's a lot of strategizing going on. There's a lot of game theory. And I think that those that are paying a lot of attention will probably do very well out of this. And you can also luck out. So when you combine five commons, you have a chance of getting an epic. A lot of the floor prices of the epics are around about 1-2 ETH. And then if you hit that legendary card, so you effectively go from it's like a rare. So if you combine 5 rares, you have a chance of hitting a legendary, not the one on stage, but the legendary version of that particular card. That then results in like these cards are going for, well, we saw Pac-Man go for 18.9 ETH. So that gives you some idea of how much people are willing to pay for this.
Yeah. Very, very fair stuff. Nice little summary of the variety of options. I've seen a few people kind of go for the sweep the commons kind of perspective, and definitely it's been re-emphasized that the gold jackpot people will have an additional chance to win. So if your token, if your NFT has won already, it doesn't mean that you are excluded from future jackpots. So we'll see how that goes. Interesting perspective there. Let's get into the Web3 news to get you up to speed with everything else that's happened over the weekend, and then we want to hit the final headline of the day. So starting with the Web3 roundup, as always, which is in the snapshot, which is pinned up top. Number 1, Eigenlayer increases the Eigen allocation after community anger. We spoke a lot last week about the Eigenlayer airdrop, big restaking protocol on Ethereum. A lot of value that's going to be passing to the community, but lots of them did not like it, and they successfully bullied the protocol to give them more. This is happening more and more, actually. This happened exactly with EtherFi too, where they just complained a lot and got given more. So that is the game plan now, if you're not happy with your airdrop allocation. Number 2, Sui hits 41 million daily transactions, surpassing Solana in daily transactions. That's pretty interesting. I thought that was a very, very noteworthy statistic at the moment. Next, Vodafone telecoms provider plans to integrate crypto wallets with SIM cards. Very interesting to think about how people might be trying to bank more people with crypto and get them using crypto in that way. Next, Blast community coin Pac-Moon teases social validators. That seemed like a pretty interesting concept. They've got something cooking for V2 of Pac-Moon. Obviously been a very successful community coin so far. We'll see how that progresses. Next, ApeCoin kicks off partnership with BWT Alpine F1 racing team in Miami. Seems to be a real correlation with crypto and F1. Absolutely, like a bunch of F1 teams wanting to have exposure to crypto and the other way around. Interesting to see. And finally, X overtakes Insta and Facebook in traffic for the 6th month. For the 6th consecutive month, the platform known as X has surpassed major social networks like Instagram and Facebook in driving traffic through Google on both web and mobile platforms. Interesting to note. Luckily, we are all addicted here, so that is good for us. Legendary, that is the WebD Roundup. That is everything else we want to be aware of in the space. We've got just a few minutes left. We've spoken about SocialFi. We've spoken about Blast NFTs a lot. We either want to just touch on Friendtech. I don't know if you actually spoke about this on Friday when I wasn't on the show, or just touch on crypto, which is back at 65K. We're so back. What do you think? Where do you want to go with this?
We spoke a lot about Friendtech.
Cool.
Actually dedicated almost the entirety of Friday's episode on that. I did want to make a remark on what you said in terms of the eigenlayer stuff, and that also kind of connects to the general market.
Sure.
That you always have that trade-off, right? Do you reward in a fair way, which is linear, and you actually reward whales for their contributions linearly and piss off the community, or do you reward the smaller depositors more, but by doing that also reward Sybils, right? And you kind of start on that. Let's do a linear distribution and see how hard the community pushback is. And if it's too hard, and actually that FUD could influence our FTV and our token launch negatively, we're just gonna adapt to that. I think this is the playbook. Start with your model in mind, with your linear distribution, see how hard the community pushback is, and then see how you're gonna change that. Because now with eigenlayer, especially people who have with that minimum, what is it, 100 eigen, I think.
Yeah.
Everyone who participated on dozens of wallets is winning by that, right? And we're seeing now a similar discussion with, I don't know if you followed that a bit, with Layer 0 and the way they go about Sybil, about eliminating Sybils, and CC2, one of the largest airdrop farmers, having an absolute breakdown over that on the weekend and going utterly ballistic because it's been farming that airdrop for the last, I don't know, 1.5 years with probably like hundreds of wallets. And by using Merkley, which is that tool that allows you to like mint free NFTs and bridge them, basically team had said that Merkley users will be flagged as Sybils, and you can now self-report and only get 15% of the allocation that would have gone to you, or risk that there's going to be a bounty program for the community and they can flag Sybils. And there was Hop Protocol who did the same, the bridging protocol back in the day.
Yeah.
And if they get you, they get the airdrop that otherwise would have gone to the Sybil. And yeah, that witch hunt didn't end well. Hop Protocol token didn't go up nicely. So that witch hunt never really works because community power is quite a strong one. So it's important to balance those two. But I was also honestly entertained by CC2's ongoing rage against Layer 0. I think he's tweeting like 30 times a day, and I don't know.
Get him into Fantasy Top.
He would win that. Yeah, he would win that with his Layer 0 rage and community.
Gosh. You're right, though. Like, being spurned by the protocol who you have dedicated so much time to is one of the most rage-inducing things, I think, for people. It's actually partly why I never spend too much time because I never want to feel so like slighted and so pissed off because I've invested so much time. It's more just about allocating, and then you see what you get. Be happy with what you get. Whereas if you do make it your kind of your life mission to extract every single thing you can out of one, and then they don't, I can see why you'd be far more upset. But equally, from the perspective of the protocol, you need to strike that balance. Interesting approach that you suggested, which is like go for linear if possible, and then just kind of taper it off at the end. That might be wise. Any final thoughts on just the fact that we're just back at 65K, well, down to 64K now, Legendary, but I mean, the timeline was losing its mind at the start of last week. Like, is this just people losing their mind every now and again? And it's just to be expected?
I think it's people losing their mind because we're not moving up in a straight line to BTC, I don't know, to 1 million. And it's been just a little correction. So I mean, obviously, I also don't like it in my portfolio, right? I hate it when I see it, but it's nothing that I worry about. I'd probably be worried if ETH goes back into 3 digits, that I really, really wouldn't like. But seeing a 20-30% correction in a bull market, especially after the halving, I mean, it's nothing we haven't seen before. And we do like to extrapolate the future from the past, which also is not a very accurate way to do things, but it's often the best thing we have. So it's not a new behavior or pattern that we're observing in the market. So even less of a reason for me to be worried at the moment.
Good stuff. I subscribe to that. And I actually subscribe to the thing that you said at the top of the show, bringing this thing full circle, which is I'm not kind of stressed about these price fluctuations, particularly because I believe I'm allocated in a responsible way to each of the things. More stressed about like the number of things which are going on, making sure that the things that I'm bullish on, I actually follow through, make sure I execute on the things which I want to bet on. If I want to double down on something, make sure that I've actually done that, because I'd be more upset with myself thinking I'm hyper bullish on something and then not following through on that. Whereas something being down 10% or up 10% is kind of neither here nor there for me at the moment. So similar perspective for me. Guys, we hope that has been an interesting show for you. As always, been a pleasure to deliver that to you. Thank you, as always, to my legendary co-hosts, Legendary and Sammy. Thank you to our speakers, Funky, today. And thank you for joining us. As always, shout out to the people in the YouTube comments, lighting things on fire. Thank you for joining us in the Twitter audience as well. And we'll be back with you tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.